Naturalist and biologist Charles Robert Darwin was one of the most influential scientific thinkers of all time. His reflections on the history and diversity of the world, including the theory of evolution and the origin of the human race, contributed to significant changes in science, philosophy, social thought, and people's religious beliefs. Although Darwin's theory of evolution made a substantial revolution in the fields of anthropology, psychology, and social sciences in general, its influence on visual culture is still being studied. For over 150 years, artists worldwide responded to his postulates and the ideas they initiated. In 1859, Charles Darwin published the epical book On the Origin of Species. It argued that organisms gradually evolved through a process he called natural selection. Natural selection is a process that results in the adaptation of an organism to its environment by means of selectively reproducing changes in its genetic constitution. Adding fuel to the fire in 1871, Darwin's Descent of Man and Selection in Relation to Sex appeared. The work's first postulate was that all species living on Earth could form a single ancestral lineage. There he explained the biological connection between man and animals. This work provoked lively discussions about the concept of origin and evolution and caused the formation of a counterfront directed against Darwin's ideas. In return, numerous essays, reports, and studies appeared, which defended his views and deepened his ideas. The following year, in 1872, Darwin's work, The Expression of the Emotions in Man and Animals, was published. There he presented the opinion that animal emotions are similar to human emotions and that the expression of certain emotions in humans is directly derived from animals and is the same as in them. From the moment of their publication, these texts provoked heated discussions about the origin of life, and as we shall see, these were not limited exclusively to scientific circles. Through the development of technology, the illustrated press, and other media, these debates entered the homes of millions across Europe. Artists were also interested in the new development in the natural sciences, albeit to differing degrees. They either read texts by Darwin or by those who reacted to him. Some, like the French symbolist Odilon Redon, subscribed to Darwin's view that diverse organisms share common ancestors. On the other hand, some rejected Darwin, choosing to remain creationists, like the American artist Frederick Edwin Church. Nonetheless, natural and sexual selection, species survival, missing links in evolution, and the animal origins of humanity were being realized in various visual forms throughout Europe. In England, Darwin's homeland, artists were more reluctant to join the debate than in other countries. Artistic response to Darwin's theory of evolution in England is best explained through the works of George Frederick Watts. The autodidact artist strove to create art that melded spiritual, biblical, and contemporary scientific ideas. Watts was neither a creationist nor a Darwinist. He described himself as a deist, perhaps a personalized response to the challenge of Darwin's theory of natural selection. Watts found a compromise in the idea that evolution was a planned process guided by a providential power. The artist frequently commented on evolution, consciousness, and the unity of scientific, cultural, and spiritual laws. Watts's Eve trilogy explores human history's progressive and regressive paths, intending to reconcile Darwinian evolution with the spiritualization of being. In She Shall Be Called Woman, the first of the three, Watts abandons the world of Genesis and presents Eve as a triumphant, ascendant figure rising into the atmosphere. For Watts, this figure embodied the ideal inheritance of humanity from its mother. Eve is represented as the embodiment of nature with her feet firmly planted in the earth and as a stream of pure energy motored by the heat and light of the sun. The unfinished quality of the painting caused concern when the work was exhibited in 1892, but this dematerialization of form gives the image its metaphysical charge. The following paintings, Eve Tempted and Eve Repentant, present a woman as an instinctual being. In the former painting, Eve succumbs to the senses since she is a creature not so far removed from the animal world, as suggested by the lioness frolicking at her feet. In her repentance, Eve presses her body against the tree trunk, a gesture expressive of her yearning to return to the earth in contradiction to the spirit that propelled her into existence. Unlike most other countries in Western Europe, evolutionary theory was embraced in Germany more readily, even to Darwin's surprise. In 1861 he remarked, "The support which I receive in Germany is my chief ground for hoping that our views will ultimately prevail." Germans have already been familiar with the notion of a man as a part of nature, not above it. Similar ideas have already permeated the works of highly revered authors like Johann Wolfgang von Goethe and Immanuel Kant. Goethe's Faust, Part 2, and the Metamorphosis of Plants contained his belief in transformation, descent theory, and evolution. The German Naturphilosophie, despite its spiritual idealism, highlighted the relationship and connection of man and nature. Its proponents believed in a concept of the organic world shaped by process and historical change. By the middle of the 19th century, German scientists examined issues in philosophy, history, and anthropology from a materialist point of view. This examination led them to reject the idea of divine creation and a theological worldview altogether. In their new godless world, they accepted Darwinism, even criticizing it, making corrections and additions to the original work of Charles Darwin. Arnold Böcklin and Max Klinger, both considered prime examples of German art, were keenly interested in Darwinist ideas and their implications. Against all the artistic trends and traditions, Böcklin transformed the classical pantheon following new scientific developments. The visual bestiary he was able to build was based both on the concrete and metaphorical implications of the Darwinian discourse. In his own artistic way, Arnold Böcklin was visualizing the issue of how to depict the Darwinian man and the missing links of human evolution. Though mythological in the title, the painting Triton and Nereid presents us with ideas about humankind's origins and evolution. The creatures in the painting are representatives of different developmental epochs. In this case, the sea serpent belongs to the early stages of life on Earth. Triton, being a half fish, half man, is a missing link in an evolutionary chain leading to man's emergence, and the human-like Nereid who sprawls beside him is his closest relative. Like many German Darwinists, Max Klinger began his studies of nature and developed them into studies of contemporary society. In Rivals, from the graphic series A Life, published in 1882, the two crazed men are fighting akin to animals, and their conquest will be the prostitute observing them with a satisfied smile. The image is almost a caricature of Darwin's animals, engaged in desperate conflicts, in the law of battle for the possession of the female, and a reminder that all civilized nations are the descendants of barbarians. Rivals testify to Klinger's awareness that Darwinism attached great significance to the role of sexual selection in the evolution of the species. Ernst Haeckel was a 19th-century German zoologist and one of the most influential proponents of Darwinism. During his scientific career, Haeckel proposed new notions of human evolution, made strides in heredity problems, and coined many terms used in biology today, like ecology, phylum, and phylogeny. The contemporary scientific community was not interested in his works, but they were nonetheless popular with the broader public. In his books published in the 1890s, The Riddle of the Universe and Art Forms in Nature, he culminated a 4-decade-long scientific endeavor by presenting evolution as a worldview capable of answering metaphysical questions. In The Riddle of the Universe, Haeckel fully elaborated his concept of monism as a pantheistic religion of nature predicated on recent discoveries in natural sciences. Haeckel's monism offered a belief in an interconnected universe in which spirit is immanent in matter. Ernst Haeckel's monism transformed Darwinism from a process of random selection and competition to an ordered unity of nature in which man was part of a universal chain of being. Monism postulated the oneness of matter and spirit governed by the immutable mechanical law of substance. Darwin's theory of evolution enabled Haeckel to draw a network of kinship across organisms from a primitive protoplasm called Monera to plants and animals. Both of Haeckel's books, together with the work of Wilhelm Bolsche, Love Life in Nature, published in 1898, opened a new view of the world and furthered the reach of monism. Thanks to evolutionary monism, which fused the body and the soul, the world came alive as a spiritually and sexually charged whole. The most fertile ground for its influence was Austria, where a long cultural tradition led to the loss of clarity between the categories of physical and metaphysical and the flesh and spirit. In Vienna, the advocates of rationalism, positivism, and Darwinism were outnumbered by a new generation of artists who pursued a more instinctive, emotional, and mystical side of human nature. Despite being more inspired by the irrational parts of the human psyche, the new generation remained loyal to contemporary science's findings. They were led by the artists of the Vienna Secession, who were the first to create works inspired by Darwinism. Ernst Haeckel's presence in the works of Gustav Klimt is perhaps more obvious in his underwater paintings, like Water Serpents II. In his mythological and eroticized aquatic scenes, one recognizes Bolscha's descriptions of the ocean as a primordial erogenous zone, alive with the desire that fuels evolution and ripples the universe. In Love Life in Nature, he writes that the water teems with infinite life, trees rising from the coral depths covered with the greedy orange-yellow mouths of polyps, darting silvery fish, and the Medusa, the most enchanted of all children of the sea, myriads of quivering souls, all in one vast chain of life, one vast chain of love. His painting Water Serpents I, Friends, recapitulates evolution thematically from cell to plant to fish, reptiles, and the emerging woman. The hybrid forms and collage-like fragments are stylistically reassembled into a monistic whole. The palette and sinuous contours echo the curvilinear forms and jewel-hued richness of Ernst Haeckel's illustrations in Kunstformen der Natur. They demonstrate Bolscha's rhythmic ornamental principle, beauty that evolves through sexual selection, and the universe is morphologically linked by a world arabesque. Bolscha explored these ideas in his illustrated article The Line of Beauty in Nature, published in Wiener Mode, a fashion magazine Klimt was familiar with. Reluctant at first to accept Darwin's ideas, French scientists soon started researching their implications on the antiquity of humans. The neurologist and craniologist Paul Broca spearheaded the effort, founding the Société d'Anthropologie in Paris in 1859. In 1867, prehistoric artifacts and Iron Age tools were exhibited at the Universal Exposition in Paris. The prehistory of man became the collecting focus of the Musée des Antiquités Nationales. The museum was established by Napoleon III in 1862 and soon became a prehistoric art gallery. After the commercial success of the engravings done by Émile Bayard in 1870 for the book Primitive Man, many artists started creating believable images based on the fossil remains. Xenophon Helluin painted the funeral at the banks of the Seine, prehistoric Gaul, was inspired and based on the 1867 excavation of a sepulchre in Argenteuil, sponsored by the Musée des Antiquités. In 1870, Napoleon III gave Helluin's painting to the museum, where it was duly exhibited. Some of the tools, though mainly hypothetical, can be identified with Argenteuil excavation, and the setting and figural groups seem indebted to one of Bayard's plates in that book. In 1908, a near-complete skeleton of a Neanderthal was unearthed near La Chapelle-aux-Saints and became one of the most sensational French finds to date. Anthropologist Marcellin Boule was the first to argue that this skeleton presented a separate species of man. The following year, the French periodical L'Illustration asked František Kupka to provide a plausible representation of the man. The image appeared in February 1909 and was the first artistic representation of Neanderthal man. Using Boule's scientific paper as a literary source, Kupka emphasized the bestial qualities of this man described as an ancestor, the man of 20,000 years ago. The Scottish anthropologist Sir Arthur Keith disagreed with Kupka's rendition of the Neanderthal. He commissioned Amédée Forestier to create another drawing based on the skeleton that looked much closer to modern man. The artist most oriented towards Darwinism was Fernand Cormon. Not only did he read Descent of Man, but he frequently traveled to the Musée des Antiquités to closely study its collection. His painting Cain from 1880, culminating his research, was the sensation of that year's Salon. The Stone Age weapons and the bent, emaciated bodies of the figures carrying them were features that suggested that members of this prehistoric tribe were more beast than man. Cain's receding forehead, protruding brow, and dangling right hand recall the drawings of the skeletons of apes.